Are you ready for a SitRep, a situational report of the first 100 days of the Trump administration? Well, stand by, because on today's show, I'm going to grade the entire crew. Hoo-yah! Welcome to the David Rutherford Show. What's up, everybody? Now, I'm going to tell you a little story to get this thing rolling, right? To help set the stage for what I'm going to do here in a little bit for you. Now, take yourself back, right? Teleport yourself back to this past summer. The president the head candidate against the president is getting ready to do, this big live open air, huge political event out in Butler, Pennsylvania. And, tensions are already high. We've got all this other thing that's transpired. We're beginning to know the truth about Biden and what's going on behind the scenes. Well, we start going, we watch, this him come on stage, and it's like this live one, and they're broadcasting it on CNN, and everybody's all fired up. And before you know it, guess what? President Trump takes a round to his ear. And unfortunately, another gentleman was shot and killed that day, and some other folks were injured. And the true tragedy of what our political environment has descended down into. Now, if you're anything like me, and you were paying attention to that, you were thanking your heavens, not only that the president didn't get shot, but you were thanking your heavens that, like, here we go, man. I've got all my kit ready. I've got my, year's worth of food. I've got my water storage. I've got, my community that I'm already in dialed in with, my good friends out there, and what our plan is going to be if this thing goes sideways. The next thing you know, we devolve into some type of bizarre martial state, and the whole thing blows up in front of us. And unfortunately, I, along with, I think, millions of other Americans, had gotten to this bizarre state in the summer of 2024 that, this is a real possibility. That somehow, somewhere, our country has devolved into this place where there's enough animosity, there's enough rhetoric, there's enough propaganda, there's enough assault on our civil liberties that people were, in many, many cases, advocating for some type of catastrophic event to take place in order for us to go toe-to-toe with each other. Now, obviously, the people that invested in that much, spewing that much hatred against one side or the other, right? They have never spent one friggin' second in an actual war zone. They've never actually read the books about the Civil War, Shelby Foote's books, right? They never even watching Ken Burns' documentary did an amazing job of displaying the true carnage of what took place on American soil against one another, whether it was Gettysburg or Bull Run or even the March to the Sea. What happened in Atlanta and all these other places, man, and how we butchered one another because of our economic disputes, our moral disputes, or whatever it was. And so, and look at what happened as a result of that, an assassination. And assassinations are not, we shouldn't say they're uncommon, obviously. We're 47 presidents, and how many of them have either been assassinated or attempts on their lives. And so people want to believe that democracy is this, tried and true and tested thing that can endure all of the hardships of all these different types of ideas. But unfortunately, it can't. And it happens when whatever side you want to call it, this side versus that side, are pitted against you in this craziness, right? Now, I think there's, what you have to begin to analyze is, how did this take place? And if you're like me, it really began with the assault on Trump during his first term, and what I really began to understand about the whole Russiagate fiasco and where that was. And just recently, I think last week or so, there was an assessment that came out that a major news organization did this on prime time and talked about the fact that it is now very well aware, because we've internally at the Bureau, they've seen the investigation that was conducted, that Hillary Clinton ordered that whole thing to go down. She gave the go-ahead, the thumbs up, because she was worried about the email scandal, because she was worried about what was going to take place, the corruption within the Clinton Foundation, what went on in Haiti, all these catastrophic things, Benghazi, the uranium deal, all of this stuff that propped her up as a person that I don't believe is very focused on anything other than, her own rise to the pinnacle of power. And out of that, what we saw is, for me, it was this cascading thing that really kind of blew up for me and became a reality. Leading up to 2020, I get locked out of a couple of my social media accounts, and all my friends are getting, censored, and we see censorship begin to explode in 19, 20, and 21. I mean, it was just madness. Like, where is this coming from? And now we know, with the incredible work that Mike Benz has done, is that there had been developed a censorship industrial complex, right? And this was the same organizations, NGOs funded by USAID and other government-funded organizations that would get together, and it really started overseas. Whether it was, discouraging candidates, or through social media attempts, the rise of color revolutions, and in many cases, the actual funding of the media in many different places. And we know that was true as well. And so you have this political turmoil fueled by propaganda and censorship of one group versus another. And then obviously the COVID thing has just exacerbated this whole thing. Like, wait a minute, you're telling me one thing and this whole other thing is actually true. And we all know, 6 feet made up, mask worse, and the catastrophic impact that thought is having. And still to this day, it's people aren't recognizing the dramatic nature of whether it was heart inflammation or turbo cancers that are taking place right now. I mean, this is all, madness, right? Or Democratic madness, or a Republic madness, or however you want to describe it, and what you want to point the finger at whose fault it was. But this was the scenario. You were either, a Nazi, or you were a socialist. You were a fascist, or you were a Marxist. You were against democracy, or you were for democracy. And it was like, this was how we were pitted against each other. And what I ultimately believe it was is, it's kind of our traditional conservative values versus kind of a postmodernistic socialist values that were now being pitted head to head, or as a lot of people want to say, it was, woke versus tradition, or whatever moniker the elites or the experts, or trust the scientists, or whoever was spewing this hatred out, which ultimately pitted us all together against each other. Now, again, I'm not any better than anybody else out, man. I got sucked into it. I mean, there was times where I was, pretty dogmatic about my stance on the other side. Well, you're this and you're this. And no, I didn't do it publicly because I've been silenced, but, I was willing to go toe to toe with people as I was traveling around the country giving speeches. And, I had to be very delicate why I did it and how I did it. But I was pushing these things that I had spent an incredible amount of time researching and understanding, and what the arguments were. Now, all that built up to what, and the other one that really kind of got me was kind of the disruption to the democratic process, in particular for Biden. once they decided to, can that guy, which was a good choice because he was ultimately incompetent, and we all knew that for years, right? But then the way they went in and just replaced him with Kamala Harris, which, of course, hey, we're going to do this, do that. She's like, yep, sure. What do you want me to say? I mean, that's ultimately what it seems like people who have this desire to ascend to this high position of power, right? It's like who's ever pulling their strings, they tell them what to say and they say it. Well, they essentially just eradicated the entire primary process. So you see all these things, and that's what sparks this animosity. So if you're trying to understand why people are at each other's throats as much, do yourself a favor and dig into some of these realities in a little bit deeper way. Because now it's become very apparent through, I think ultimately because X was purchased by Elon Musk and we finally had a true free speech platform where people could share their ideas, which is ultimately what is the epitome of what holds a society together in a meaningful way, when one idea can be tested against, a whole series of other ideas. Which one of the ideas is the best foundation, and then let people make the decisions. I.e., that's why the First Amendment is what it is. And so we get to this place in the fall, and it's this crescendo, and all of a sudden, America, and the majority, we think of Americans, although polling is always a joke, right? We now know after years and years and years of just ridiculous polling that, it's all manipulated. But you had a sense of a feeling. And for me, as I was traveling around the country, going to states and, 25, 30 states a year for 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, it was pretty clear what America wanted, or the majority of America. They wanted America to stop being engaged in wars. Now, for me, this is the epitome. This is the stance that in my old age, and there was this, guy I follow and really enjoy his podcasts out there, and, he kind of framed it like this, like when I was a young man, and I went into the service, I was much more prone to go to war. I wanted to go and stand up for what I believed in and be willing to fight for the things that I believed America represented, and as did I. And then after what we know now about what war actually looks like and the impact on civilians in particular, right? The impoverished people, children, right? Women, the elderly. I mean, it's devastating. It's devastating all the way around. And so, now as I'm an old man, I'm a crusty old frog man. I don't want to go to war anymore. And I don't want young men to go to war and die for something that's not really what it is. I don't want to expend any more courage needlessly in places that ultimately don't have our best interests at hand. And that's a reality. And so, I think no more wars, right? Stop wars. That's good. The other one is to stop the invasion of our country. I think it's, and this is the irony. And, you go back, I don't know, you go back when Clinton was running, and even before, I mean, there are clips now that are emerging that she's actually more MAGA than Trump is, right? In terms of their immigration policies. And that's a reality. But what do? We depend upon where, the people who are going to fund our campaigns, we'll shift a little bit left or right, I guess, is how it works. But the other one was America wanted to stop the immigration because small towns all over the country were feeling the impact. And I know the automatic thing that people want to say is it's crime shot through the roof. And it certainly went up in many places. And it certainly, but I think that was more a result of pullback on policing from 2020 and kind of, the defund the police madness and all of that. And I think, also this wave of a criminal element that came in. And and if you don't believe that, all you got to do is look at statistics that are placed by the, UN and other people that go into these regions that have high crime rates. And in these very significant crime areas, crime dipped. Why? Because they were all these people were coming into America for the American dream, or whatever that monthly amount was, and your debit card and your cell phone, and your staying in New York City at some nice hotel and getting 3 squares and a hot meal a day, and all these other things. So we had this mass immigration that, there's a lot of people out there who've done incredible work, Michael Yon, Ben Berquam, Oscar Ramirez. I mean, these people have been very in-depth in how they've evaluated who's funding it, where it's coming from. And it's not just in America, it's in England, and it's all these other places. And you have to realize that immigration is good, very, very fired up. I love when people can come, seek out the American dream, invigorate communities with their culture and with their ideas and their hard work and all of that. But there's another aspect with cultures that don't want to assimilate, that want to set up their own enclaves of potentially counterculture to what the American spirit, at least as I see it, is really important on. And so stop immigration. Everybody got that. We need to stifle the tide of immigration because it's destroying communities. Now, whatever you reason, and I'll do a show in the future about how it was funded, where it came from, the sophisticated nature of it, the impacts, all the different economic influences on what was driving it. I believe political issues from increasing voting bloc. We'll do that, but right now I don't. Remember, this is just an evaluation of the first 100 days, a SitRep, a situational report. The other one I think was really kind of the stop corruption. I think what we really began to see is there was some profoundly corrupt things taking place, whether it was corruption in the judicial system, a two-tier justice system. I just did a show about that, and I hope it was meaningful you to understand kind of how it works with the judges and who picks and how it goes and how it's become ideological. But, that spills out into all different formulas. And I think now what we've also seen through DOGE is the corruption within government itself is pretty staggering. It's pretty staggering. Now, I've always known corruption was there because, I spent a lot of time not only working for DOD, but working for the military-industrial complex, as well as working for the intelligence community. And, government contracts are big business, right? And from the defense industry. And then obviously, as we talked about before, with the censorship industrial complex, NGOs, immigration industrial complex with other NGOs, and the amount of money that was flowing in, my taxpayer dollars, your taxpayer dollars, was just astronomical. And so people wanted to stop corruption, stop wokeism, right? This whole idea that there needs to be some type of equitable restructuring of society, that somehow, somewhere, someplace, I should recognize that I've been an oppressor in some capacity, and I need to shame my children to think they're oppressors in some capacity. I just don't get that, man. Because there's no end to this, and I think we see this playing out in a lot of geopolitical situations all over the country. It's like, how far back do I have to go to realize, before I'm not an oppressor, or the legacy of who I am or what I am or where I come from is not oppressive? And that was never explained. You saw Matt Walsh's, what is a woman? The fundamental defining principles of biology all of a sudden were in question. And I think when you saw that fuse into the educational system, and don't get me started in the education, Jordy and I are working on a show for that. We're going to go deep dive on that one here in the next couple weeks and really flush that out, and where it began and the manipulation of the curriculum and all that. But what we saw is people wanting to introduce ideology to our children. And then what happened? Those people were thrown in jail as a result of standing up for what they believed in. And so people got to a place where they're like, enough is enough. This is insane. This is ridiculous. So stop wars, stop immigration, right? Stop the corruption, stop wokeism. And the other one that I think really you need to understand, and this is the ultimate backbone of American society, is the attack on small businesses. When we saw COVID hit, right, how many millions of small businesses were destroyed? Meanwhile, you had the John F. Kennedy Center out in, or not the Performance Center in Washington, D.C. get $155 million in COVID relief fund. Or you had famous stars or people getting, $3, $4, $9 million for their organizations. Meanwhile, they're billionaires. And, I freaked out because I got a $45,000 to make sure my business didn't collapse because I didn't have any revenue or income to feed my 4 kids. So I think the attack on small businesses really reshaped people's ideas too. And then the other aspect of that, and that we've been talking quite a bit about on this show, is what? How are young people going to afford the American dream? How hard is it to go out and get approved for a line of credit? Or how hard is it to find a space that you can afford for rent and start your business? And, thankfully, if you were positioned right and you had the technical acumen or just the drive and motivation to work hard and to grind, right, there were some great successes. Online businesses flourished. But what we also saw in that time was a massive consolidation, right? We saw retail collapse. We saw other forms collapse. And who got stronger? Big business, man. Now, again, I'm not attacking that. I'm a fundamental, capitalist. I believe in, the best product, the best service will rise to the top. But when those metrics can be adjusted by the people that allow commerce or the funnel of commerce that goes through them, whether it's whether or not your app gets seen or your app gets, reduced or your YouTube videos get throttled or whatever it might be, there was an attack on small business for sure. And then, the last one obviously is government overreach. Man, I'm not the type of person that doesn't believe that government doesn't play a massive role in our lives as it should. There's literally thousands of great things that the government is able to do for people every year and around the world as well too. But I think what we all realize now is that with every catastrophic circumstance that takes place, the government encroaches. It takes that one more bigger bite into our liberty. It takes one more bigger bite into the idea that we are free, that we are, in a way, we are the masters of our own destiny. And I think for sure what COVID really enabled people to feel for the first time is that that's in a bigger jeopardy than we imagined it was. And that it's time to pay attention of those liberties and what's happening. The one for me that I still can't get over to this day. Now, thank God they're trying to right these wrongs, was young men and women that raised their right hand in order to stand up and wear the uniform and fight for us and represent us and around the world and represent American might and strength. They were kicked out of fulfilling their dream because they wouldn't take the COVID. And that's tyranny. And I think we saw it in many different ways. And so, this is a pretty substantial list. And that's why I believe we got where we are today. We got back in November, where overwhelming numbers came out, right? Landslide numbers. But it was not only the grassroots campaign, but it was this shift away from craziness, back to common sense. And I truly believe that the majority of what you truly want is you want to live in a common sense world, right? And so there was this shift, and you saw people from the left come over and say, all right, we're done with that madness, the true, fringe stuff. And I think people got in, including minorities, highest rates of Black men, Hispanic men voting for Trump, and this new idea to reinvigorate the American dream, to make America great again. So that took place. And I think everybody, including me, was like, all right, I could go put all my prepper stuff back in my storage facility. I can stop building out kits for my kids. I can, replace all my ammo in a more safe and secure place. And I can stop having, a ton of fuel in my garage, right? And I can take that sigh of relief and stop being such a nut job thinking that the world was going to end, or at least we were going to go into potential civil war. And that was a good feeling. It really felt good. I know you felt good. I know everybody felt good. I think some of the people on both sides of the fringe, they never feel good, but it is what it is, right? You can't please. But those of us who really believe in the fundamental things that enable us to coexist together in a way that's positive, right? Not giving up what you believe in or your culture or anything, but to recognize, hey, you do your thing, I'll do my thing. As long as you're not hurting me, you're not attacking me, you're not creating violence, have at it, man. And I think that's the way the overwhelming majority of people believe. I know I believe that, even though I've seen a lot of different things in this world. I've been exposed to things that are pretty heavy. But on the flip side, I've also been exposed to the real beauty of what people are capable when they're focused and driven and they're inspired and they want to make a difference in the world. So, saying all that to say this is, and I appreciate your patience as I kind of got us here. I think it's now time to give my report card on what's taken place. So just give us a second. I'll be right back to give you that. Do you like your food hot? Do you like it spicy? Do you like it kicking you in the gut every time you eat it, but not in a bad way, but with that I can't wait for that next bite? Well, you need to go to Firecracker Farms, all right? That's firecracker.farm. And you need to check out this beautiful hot salt out of these beautiful shakers that just a little bit of on your eggs every morning, on your steak at lunch and at your steak at dinner. I know what I said. I said 2 steaks a day, and that's good for you, right? Keto away, baby. All right. So go to firecracker.farm, type in RUT, Romeo, Uniform, Tango, 15, and you'll get your discount. And by the way, man, I'll tell you what, this is a family-owned business. My buddy Alex and his kids, they grow the peppers, they give them love, they put it in there. It's all comes from the heart. So I promise you, if you want to spice up your food in a really positive way, visit firecracker.farm, RUT 15, hoo-yah. Thanks for coming back. Thanks for being patient. I hope you understand, we need the advertising. It's what keeps the show going. So I appreciate your patience with the ads. You understand how it works. If you could, also, I just want to give a shout out. Please, like, subscribe, leave a comment. Man, that's the stuff that boosts us in the algorithms. That's the stuff that helps. And the biggest one for me is twofold: is don't be afraid to share with your friends, bring them over and, I'll give them, let Jordy and I take a crack, see if they can appreciate what we're saying. And if it's impactful for them, then, hopefully they'll do the same. And the other is, if you want to share any piece of the show, you cut it, you chop it, you edit it, go ahead. In particular, the funny ones, I love that. So for sure, like, share, spread, all that stuff. I appreciate it. All right. So now's the crux of this whole. Let's get into the meat and potatoes for this thing. Now, grading system. How do I grade the Trump administration in their first 100 days? Now, I'm sure you have seen, just like I have, all over all my different feeds, all my different social media places, everybody's talking about these grades. And so I did a, F through A, but I also had a pass fail section of this too as well. And I'll explain that when we get into it. All right, so here's my take. Here's my situational report. Here's my SitRep, my grading SitRep for the past 100 days. Now, let's just start with the one guy that I've been really surprised and really stoked with and, paying attention to him. And I've watched just about every interview he's given. And it's really, it's just, I'm happy to see this. And this is Howard Lutnick. And one of the things that was, again, at the center point of where I'm at in terms of my mindset as it relates to my family and the people I care most about in life, my children, right? I don't want any more wars. I don't want any more things to pop off. We're done. Let's take a break. Let's get our stuff dialed in, rebuild the military, rebuild our equipment, but no more wars. And so, what I've seen from this gentleman is he's gone out and he's really reinvigorated diplomacy. Now, many people don't recognize that diplomacy is all about compromise. And what you have to be willing to do is give up some of what you want in order to get the grander idea of this thing. And so based on one of, Trump's most important promises that I really got behind was he's going to end Ukraine, right, in Russia, that he's going to end the thing going on with Israel and Hamas and Hezbollah and Palestinians. He's going to end that. He's going to do it immediately. And so I was like, hoo-yah. Well, obviously that's much more complicated than a phone call and being like, hey, Vladimir, here's the deal. I'll turn on the pipeline. I'll take the restrictions off. Stop killing Ukrainian kids and let's have at it. Don't worry about little Zelensky. I got him, right? And we all imagine, well, guess what happened? We've seen the bombing pick up. Rubio's walking away. Lutnick, I just want to hope and believe that he's still fighting. Let's keep doing this. Let's keep negotiating. And he's just done a really, I think, again, and I've got no inside knowledge of what he's doing, but the way he speaks about peace and the way he speaks about ending these wars, man, it got me excited. So I give him a B+, right? So keep that going. Bring diplomacy back to the highest level. Let's really invest in diplomacy. All right. Marco Rubio. All right. This was the one that I was not expecting to be where he was. I just have that burning oversight committee hearing that I saw with where he interviewed Victoria Nuland and had the dialogue back and forth. Do we have biological weapons or not? But do we have research labs in Ukraine? Yes. Meanwhile, everybody would be saying, we don't have this, nothing's going on, whatever. And so now I'm like, oh my God, that's monster, that's humongous. Like, go dig in, let's hear, like drill down. And it was like one more question and it was over. So I was not a fan because I think I had this impression that he was kind of this old neocon. But what I've seen, I'm actually impressed. I think he's so far a good representation of the diplomatic presence that we need, right? Firm, strong, but willing to make concessions, willing to work with people and what their country actually wants. We have this bizarre way in the media, and we kind of know why, to manipulate the fact that diplomacy is a bad thing, that you can't negotiate with terrorists. You can't negotiate with tyrants. You can't negotiate. And I'm like, well, that's what you got. You got what you got. So what are you going to do? Are you going to deny this and just let it compound and get worse and more people die and let it spill into a much greater problem? Or are you going to actually get to the table and go over to these places in Qatar or Saudi Arabia or Bahrain or Dubai and have these negotiations in Turkey and Poland, wherever you are, and actually sit down across from another person and say, listen, what do you want? All right, what do you want? We would like this. All right, let's start there. Now let's negotiate. So I've been incredibly pleased with Marco Rubio's performance. I'm giving him a C+. C plus mostly because, you know, some of the proverbial ways with which President Trump is maybe going out a little bit over his skis and then reeling it back and saying, you know, I'll have this thing done in a week is maybe a little bit, but I get it. He's playing poker. I know that's the wrong term to use because we're talking about World War III and nuclear genocide. But remember, like, there's a gamesmanship in this. You have to think about what are the tactical approaches when you're negotiating with somebody. How do you bait them? How do you take their bait? How do you, what is this game that's going back? And that's what it is. That's what it is. So, C plus, but keep it up. Keep going, sir. I'm behind you. I want more diplomacy. All right. Next is Susie Wiles. Obviously, she is at the center of Trump's internal world. Between her and I didn't rate Stephen Miller. Maybe I'll talk about him in the future. I'd love to interview him. I really would love to hear his thoughts or watch somebody else really dig on and not just be the pounding that he's doing on people, calling them out to their faces, although that needs to happen. All those who spewed lies for as long as they did, absolutely call them out, force them. But I'm not prepared. But Susie Wiles, is kind of the orchestrator of this whole thing. She runs Trump's world. And I was first introduced to her. A good friend of mine, John Pugh, was in charge of Palm Beach County Trump campaign back in 2016. And he and I were able to, spend a little time together. It was really fascinating to watch him. And back then she was really running Florida, leading in Florida, and had great things to say about her. Very sophisticated woman, very sophisticated political operative, if you will. And so, the things that Trump seems to have a very strong confidence in her, and so do the other people behind her. So I'm going to give her a pass because I just don't have enough information about kind of the inner workings of what's going on. But maybe in the future, I'd love to get her on the show if you ever want to do an interview. All right. Next, we go to Kash Patel. All right. Oh, Kash, man. Now, you got to understand the work that he and Devin Nunes did to investigate Russiagate was the first big shaking of the system, whether you call it the deep state, the blob, however you want to call it. Those two really dug in this, and brilliant guy, great investigator, great attorney. They got in and they rattled the cages. And then afterwards, they were absolutely prosecuted for their political evaluations. My favorite stuff is what, Kash's testimony that he gave to the January 6th committee, where it was evident and clear that the order was, put out, hey, do you want the National Guard, right? Not only did Marion Bowser of D.C. negate it, Nancy Pelosi, Capitol Police, all this, although we do know that the head of the congressional police wanted help and assistance. They turned him down. And we also know that testimony was not made public in any way, shape, or form. And so for the next 4 years, we saw this dude go on just about every podcast there was, and he's banging on his fists on the table, and I'm going to do this, and if we get in there, we're going to clean up the corruption at the Bureau. I would, move the Bureau out of D.C., and I would get rid of all this, and we're going to go after Comey, and we're going to go after this, and blah, blah, and, it's just pounding that drum, right? Whipping that MAGA bass into a phrase, from The Wolf of Wall Street. That's what that dude was doing. He was banging those drums. And I'll admit, on some of the shows he was on, I'd be like looking in the camera like, yeah, all right, let's tear it down. And well, he got that opportunity, didn't he? And his confirmation hearings were a hoot, and all the stuff that came out about him and what they were trying to do. But, he's been in there. And I think his undertaking is probably the most significant challenge out there other than Pete Hegseth, right? because it's your law enforcement has really been the thing that I think most of us have been, who pay close attention to what's taken place, has been the problem. It's like, the people that are supposed to be enforcing laws, regardless of political affiliation, we know that's just not how it works. And so what you have to do is and I believe what he's trying to do is get in there and reinforce, hey, we are a law enforcement agency. We're going to go after bad people, take bad people off the streets, including the gangs, the criminals, the cartel, which are now terrorist organizations. We're going to get back to law enforcement, supporting our local municipal law enforcement agencies, the counties, the cities, and support them with intelligence and information and funding they need in order to get these dangerous people off the streets and stem the tide of the things that are killing Americans the most, which is illegal drugs. I mean, seeing them down in Florida a couple weeks ago with this $500 million bust, man, that made me feel really good, really good. However, part of what he ran on too is like, man, we're taking down all these nefarious groups and we're going to take them down and we're going to indict them for treason and we're going to go after the Epstein clients and we're going to blah, 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 and this. And so obviously those investigations take time and take this. So what I'm going to give old Kash there, and I hope you stay true to what you told us. I'm going to give him a pass on this one right now, because some of these critical issues that we need to see take place, those take time. And the other one is I'm going to give Bongino a pass because he's brand new. He's figuring out what they got to do in terms of where to go. And then I'm also going to give Bondi a pass as well. And the reason I'm going to give Bondi a pass instead of a low grade is because of a gentleman that I love to follow. His name is Mike Davis with the Article 3 Project. He's on the War Room quite a bit. He was just on the other day and saying that he's spoken to some of the people within that. He knows the guy's the deputy of Bondi and some of the other places. And he reassured the audience that don't worry, these investigations are taking place. And remember, when you think about an investigation, what's the key? The key is, can the prosecution, can they get a conviction, right? You have to remember that. I did the thing on the legal system, and we know some of it is a little broken or a little warped or however you want to talk about it. So the key is, can you get a conviction, right? Can you get a conviction with a jury trial? And can you get a conviction that sticks with the relative punishment that's just and that will fulfill what the whole prosecution, the time, the money, the manpower is behind in order to be able to really be conclusive with what needs to be conclusive, right? So all those guys get a pass right now. But guess what? That pass ain't going to go for that much longer. So we need to see something, man. There's plenty of evidence for all these different things. We know the evidence. We've heard enough from all these House Judicial Oversight Commissions, all these other places. We just know the evidence is there. So, waiting. Next is Pete Hegseth. Poor Pete, man. You're just under assault, buddy. I know I was on Tudor Dixon's show recently, and I stared at the camera, and I called out Sean and Pete, and I said, hey, man, enough of the dog and ponies, all right? Recruitment's up. Commercials are good. Looks good. Young men are wanting to come in and serve again. But, man, get yourself in that building, because that building, a $1 trillion budget building, that building has an entrenched bureaucracy in it that I think most people can't even fathom. And, I think things maybe are getting away from Pete a little bit. That's at least the outside feeling. Now, again, we have no idea what's going on behind closed doors. What are the arguments? What's happening? We definitely know there's an attack on Pete. They're from all different directions, both inside the building, both from the intelligence world, both from all the military industrial complex who feel like there are good deals going away, all the NGOs, all the think tanks. Man, that's a sizable enemy force that is coming at him. But this is the key, right? Because what I believe is the number one place that America needs to believe in, which is the thing that has crossed lines regardless of what you believe in, the background, what color your skin, what your religion is, any of that stuff, socioeconomic background, is people believe in what the military represents. And so that needs to take place. So whatever he needs to do to get in there and root out that rot and get that structure back to where it needs to be to support the warfighter, to support America as the power that it is in the world in a positive way, then that's good. So I give Pete a C-, but very easily he could flip that around. All right, next, JD Vance, A+, dude. E5 Mafia, brother. All right, I don't care whatever, dude. As long as that dude is out there speaking truth at every one of these international forums, he's standing up, he's telling them to their face, globalization is over, we're done with it. We're not doing any more crazy stuff out there. We're not doing anything that's not based on meritocracy and the right things for America. It's over, it's done. Plus, I'll tell you what, the thing that melts me, man, is that dude truly loves his family. Just watch them in front of the Taj Mahal. Just thinking to myself, man, what an amazing moment from this kid who came from nowhere. Everybody loves everybody loves an underdog story. And so, JD, the crayon-eating E4, right, is now sitting in front of the Taj Mahal with his beautiful wife, who's brilliant, and his kids, and they're out there and they're promoting the American ideal, which is family and patriotism and rational thinking and common sense. I think, his stance against Zelensky when it was the throwdown in the White House and how he stood up for the president in America was brilliant. The work I've seen him do in Greenland, what's come out of that, I love all this. I just think he is a spectacular representation of this administration and what the very best of what America is. So JD, A+, buddy, keep it up. E5 Mafia rules, right? All right. Elon Musk, A-. Poor Elon, man. Once the darling of the Democratic Party and the left is now literally under assault. His businesses, his safety, right? His freedom to operate. We saw countries going after him, Brazil trying to take him down, with the European Union's trying to fine him in exorbitant monies. His stock price is taking hit because I don't think it's any shortage of people who want Teslas. I think there's probably some kind of nefariousness going in with shorting his stock, just like these crazies do with Blockbuster Video. I just saw it, Joanne, what's the one company? Someone I just saw something post on X where some long time clothing support where you can make your clothes and all that, they're going under now because somebody's shorting their side. That's the whole Hello Kitty. Or, no, what is it? It's Roaring Kitty, right? And GameStop. I love paying attention to this because I'm learning so much, even though I've worked extensively in the financial services industry for a long time. Understanding the power of these organizations that can manipulate stock or manipulate, boards of massive companies that short shareholder interest and globalization, man, they're going after this guy that's, transforming the way we think about everything from autonomous driving vehicles to futuristic robots to Neuralink to SpaceX to the Boring Company, underground transport systems, to all these things. And it's like, now he's the enemy? For some reason, it just doesn't make sense. But the thing that is the most important thing I think this man is ever going to be, besides enabling us to continue the species by getting to Mars, right, because that's critical, was Doge. Now, I understand that some people don't like it because why? It's shrinking government and all these other people that have built careers and reputations and funding and all these other programs. But when you break down and what we now know with this waste, fraud, and abuse at such a staggering level, and what's ultimately driven us to $37 trillion into debt, he's exposing that. And man, I know it's a tough pill to swallow. And some of them, it's sometimes tough for me. I think about all those people that were beneficiaries of whether you believe it's corruption or not, but they had their livelihood essentially cut in what's taking place. And again, we're not talking about the crazy funding of, why is BBC getting millions of dollars from USAID? Why is USAID funding the, 9 out of 10 news organizations in Ukraine? Why are they, the Atlantic Council? Why are all these, $5 billion in consultants out of DOD and $1.8 billion going to all these political-based policy consultant firms? Not just that, but I'm talking these programs that lead to nowhere. The Social Security stuff alone, right? 3.4 million people ages 150 to 159 receiving Social Security benefits. That's our money. That's your money. That's my children's money. It's their debt that they're going to have to pay. So I just believe everybody needs to stay true, be patient, and hopefully the exposure will continue. He's building the infrastructure of Doge. Yes, he's going to step back, but hopefully, that's, just to kind of let this team go and do what they do best. So Elon, A-. All right. The man himself, Donald Trump. So before we move on to Trump's grade, what I really want to do is just give you a little heads up. I want to talk about, we are going to do a live motivational event on May 31st on our Patreon account. It's a $2 a month entry subscription fee, super low. You're going to come on. I'm going to do about an hour of motivation, introducing all of you to what I've learned over the last 30 years of exploring the human condition, really trying to figure out what enables us to succeed or what drives failure through individual performance and team-oriented performance. And this thing is just going to be full of a huge dose of positivity and motivation. It's some of the core stuff that I talk about. I'm going to introduce those ideas, and those will be the follow-on live events, every few months or so. And we just really want to get you on there so you can appreciate it. And then I'll open it up to Q&A for about an hour afterwards, where you can get on, ask me anything you want to ask about motivation, about anything else. And I just think this is the kind of thing that we want to offer you as our really dear followers and listeners, is this wonderful opportunity to engage with me on this motivational performance coaching level on our Patreon account. So you can go to Patreon, and it's at David Rutherford Show, $2 subscription, and get access to this wonderful event on May 31st. Hoo-yah. All right, let's get to Trump's grade. Now, I went round and round for this in ways you can't even fathom. And so without going down the deepest rabbit holes, because I could do a whole show just on him, and maybe I'll do that in the future, I'm going to just come right out. I'm going to give Donald Trump a pass. And the only reason why I'm not giving him somewhere around a C+ or B- is two reasons. One, ending those wars. That's what I need to have happen, man. I need you to pull those wars back. I need to come back from the precipice of World War III, as well as another hot war in the Middle East. If that Iranian saber rattle, man, stop that crap right now, please. It has to stop. It will be the most devastating thing our young people have ever seen in modern era. And then the other is, man, start working with Jerome Powell. Start working with the markets, right? The volatility is unsteady for people. It affects people's livelihood. It affects people's pensions. It affects people's portfolios. Just be a little bit more focused on that, if you would. I guarantee if you do that, people are going to get behind the onshoring, the reinvestment, the foreign policy, the fighting corruption, all that. So that's my only thing. I give Trump a pass. I'll reevaluate and wait a little bit. All right. So I know that was a lot. I know sometimes I seem to run on a little bit, but again, what I really wanted you to focus on and to recognize is that what I'm here to try and do is try to summarize all this stuff, to tie it together from a common sense approach and to be really positive, because I do believe we're on a positive trajectory. I believe we've kind of put that buttress up, right? The border is secure, right? We have identified some problems within the government and how to clean that up. We're regenerating the military. We're hopefully, getting bad people out of the country. People are reinvigorated to want to serve the nation at all these different agencies. And I think for overall, like at the very minimum, I don't think anybody believes we're going to go into a civil war, the next catastrophic event. So take a deep breath. Get in your nice lotus position, right? And go hug your family and hug your kids, and just recognize that we're in a pretty good state, and things are just going to continue to look up and be better. And I believe overall we're in a good spot. So that's my 100-day SitRep for where we're at. I hope you enjoyed it, and also, just be positive, right? Don't be afraid to reach into that backpack or in that bag, your briefcase, or in your center console or in your glove box. Pull out that flashbang of positivity and go ahead and throw it into the mix, will you? Hoo-yah.